Skeletons of the Marital Closet by Tang.
Chapter 1791. Joe's expression grew increasingly perplexed as he listened. Do you get it now? Gale snapped her fingers. Of course, I just gave a rough suggestion. If you have a better method, to try it. Can this really work? It can. Women fall for this. Joe rubbed his chin. If Shawn pursued you like this, would you be moved? Gale replied, as long as a woman has even the slightest interest in you, she'll be moved. Unless she doesn't like you at all. I'll think about it. Women love romance and fall for the person who creates it. Gale grinned. Go on, go pursue her. If you need me, Joe, just let me know. Joe still frowned, pondering seriously. After a while, he leaned in mysteriously. Gale leaned closer. What's up? Still confused about something? Has Shawn pursued you like this before? No. Joe pressed on. Then what do you think is the most romantic thing he's done for you? This question stumped Gale. Shawn was a straight guy, completely clueless about women's thoughts. However, she had witnessed all the little changes he made because of his love for her. He would prepare candlelit dinners. He would give her flowers and gifts, even give her unlimited access to his credit cards. He would say, I love you. He even mentioned today that he bought the naming rights to a star, calling it Shawn Gale Star. These were Shawn's grand gestures of romance. What about the smaller ones? He would warm her hands and prepare a cup of brown sugar water for her during her menstrual period. He would hold her and tuck her in again when she kicked off the covers at night. He remembered what she liked to eat and what she did not. Why? Has Shawn never done anything romantic? You've been thinking for so long and still can't come up with anything. But I understand, he's always... Joe asked. Gale interrupted him. No, he's done plenty. Gale found it hard to choose which one. Whether grand or small gestures, they were all his expressions of love for her. Why can't you answer? Is there no memorable moment? I want to use it as a reference, to make Summer leave the deepest memory, one she'll never forget in her life. Joe asked. He was confident and ready to make a big move. Gale looked at him speechlessly. Joe, with just that sentence, you've revealed a serious lack of dating experience. He was shocked. How did that reveal anything? For women, the most memorable moments might not be the meticulously planned romantic surprises, but rather the little gestures hidden in everyday life, Gale explained. Women are creatures of detail. Joe listened, somewhat confused. It sounded reasonable, but he did not quite grasp the essence of it. Chapter 1792. He attempted to lean in closer to Gale to seek some advice when suddenly, a hand appeared behind his collar, pulling him back forcefully. Startled by the sudden tug, Joe swiftly sat back in his seat. Who dared to treat him like this? Gripping the chair's armrest, he turned around, displeased. Shawn. Shawn withdrew his hand. Men and women should keep their distance. Don't you understand? I didn't do anything. You should draw a boundary with your friend's wife. I didn't bully her. I was just talking, Joe said, bewildered. Why get so close? Shawn asked. Joe was speechless. He leaned back in his chair. Forget about it, Shawn. I have no interest in your little wife. You all know who I like. Mind the distance. Shawn crossed his arms. If I were to talk to Summer like this, could you tolerate it? Got it. Sorry, Shawn. Gale was speechless. Joe was just leaning in to have a conversation, right? It was to hear clearly and not be heard by others. How unreasonable. Why are you here? Aren't you busy? Gale asked. Shawn walked over to her. Missed you, so I came to see you. She could not help but smile. We see each other every day, what's there to miss? Just wanted to see you. In busy or dull times, just seeing her would fill Shawn with strength again. Gale smiled and threw herself into his arms. I missed you too? Beside them, Joe felt grossed out. Shivering, he tried to brush off the goosebumps. That's enough, seriously, it's getting excessive. Be mindful of the influence. This is the company, not your house. I'm sitting right here, not to mention others around. As Joe spoke, he raised his hand, intending to gesture toward the other employees. However, the employees were all focused on their work. The ones staring at the computers did not glance around, and those copying documents stood straight with their backs to the other side. It was as if the space where Shawn stood was invisible, non-existent. All right, Joe silently withdrew his hand. It was better to keep quiet. It seemed everyone was accustomed to Mr. Wood and Mrs. Wood's affectionate displays, and they had developed ways to deal with it. Besides, Gale herself was quite low-key and not fond of flaunting. She was also easily embarrassed. It was always Mr. Wood who took the initiative. All right, I'll leave. Joe stood up. Don't want to disturb you guys. After taking a few steps, Joe hesitated and then turned back. Shouldn't you tone it down a bit? Chapter 1793. With Shawn's temperament, he would most likely retort any objections. However, this time, Gale spoke first. We've already been quite restrained. Joe, when you finally win over Summer, I hope you remember what you just said. You really need to rein it in. Joe silently turned and walked away. He suddenly had an epiphany. If he ended up with Summer, he would not just want to hug and hold her, he would want to keep her by his side, holding hands all day long like twins. Shawn leaned down and sat, resting his hand on her chair. What were you talking to Joe about? Just chatting, giving him some advice. He hasn't won her over yet. Shawn raised an eyebrow. He is not doing too well then. You're mocking him? Gale snorted, her temper flaring up. Think about me. I've never even experienced being pursued. Let alone being courted. I didn't even get a proper confession from you. I just ended up marrying you and having twins. It shows it was fate. Gale clenched her fist and punched him lightly. Now that I think about it, I'm a bit envious of Summer. At least when Joe likes her, he is pursuing her properly. Unlike Shawn, who just went straight for the marriage certificate. Shall I make up for it? He leaned in, a hint of cologne lingering around his nose. What kind of confession do you want? I've already mentioned it. Only now you want to compensate me. It is not very sincere. For women, some things only hold meaning when given voluntarily, not when asked for. It would be truly appreciated when a man takes the initiative. Gale was no exception. Are you still hung up on this? Shawn reached up, pinching her nose. Actually, Gale, I've been thinking about this for a while. Liar. Gale did not believe him for a second because Shawn had become adept at it, though. Fundamentally a straight guy, he had somewhat grasped women's hearts. His sweet words flowed effortlessly, his flirting techniques instinctive. Who knows where he learned them or if it just came naturally. Really? What other women have, my Gale must have. What other women don't, my Gale must have even more, Shawn replied. He often thought that despite them being married with children, he had not given her nearly enough. He wanted to do something for her, to give her everything he had. Loving someone means selflessly giving everything you have. Is that so? Then tell me, what do you want me to have? Gale asked. His fingers twirled her hair, his eyes gleaming softly. Gale, I owe you a wedding. Her heart skipped a beat. A wedding. She had never even thought about it. Rekindling a romance, experiencing the feeling of love again. I might not be able to do it, and I might mess up. But in my life, I've only loved you, Gale. Besides, every day we're together is happy, just like when we were in love, Shawn said. So, our relationship, even though we're married, isn't any different from when we were in love. But a wedding is something we must have. Their marriage had been hasty and rushed. Afterward, Shawn never found the opportunity to hold a grand wedding. Now, it was time to give her that wedding in its entirety. It was Shawn's regret. He thought, perhaps it was also her regret. What woman had not dreamed of her wedding? Chapter 1794. Dressed in a beautiful white gown and holding a bouquet as she walked down the aisle, witnessed by friends and family, until she stood before him, handing her hand over to him. From then on, they weathered storms together, never to part. What kind of style do you prefer? I'll have them start preparing, Shawn asked. Gale blinked. Are you really planning to have a wedding ceremony? Indeed. Just a moment ago, Gale had been complaining, but now that Shawn was serious about it, she hesitated. She tended to speak her mind, but she did not actually have many demands. However, Shawn always took her every word seriously and remembered them honestly. Gazing into Shawn's eyes, Gale said, "For me, a wedding ceremony is something to look forward to. It's very romantic, but it's all superficial, just a formality. It's important, but not necessary." Really? Shawn raised an eyebrow, somewhat surprised. Did she mean she did not want to have a wedding ceremony? Gale smiled. Life is lived for oneself, not for others to see. As long as two people are together in sync, whether there's a wedding or not does not matter. Shawn, I feel happy with the way things are now. The entire city knew she was happy. Gale enjoyed Shawn's unique affection and had two adorable and intelligent babies. She was the winner in life. A grand, luxurious wedding would be the cherry on top for her. Having understood her meaning, Shawn sighed indulgently. Some wives complained that their husbands did not give enough. Gale was always easy to please. Gale reached out and held his hand. I lack nothing now, I have everything. As long as we're together, growing old together, that's my greatest happiness. Then, having a wedding is to let everyone witness your happiness. It's too ostentatious, too flashy, it may even attract jealousy. Have you forgotten why Natalie targeted me in the first place? Gale said. It all started with that priceless crown. Shawn shook his head repeatedly. What should I do with you? You say I'm not doing well enough, I improve? But when I do, you say it's not necessary? Yeah, that's how women are, aren't they? What? Since you chose me as your wife, you can only spoil me? He smiled and reached out to pull her chair closer to him. Gale exclaimed softly as the wheels slid, bringing her chair snugly beside Shawn's. Shawn wanted to pull her into his arms, but Gale was quicker, pressing against his chest. He frowned. Not even a hug. This is the jewelry department, not your office. They still needed to be mindful of their influence. Talking was one thing, but they should not be handsy. Fine, let's head back to my office, Shawn said. No, you should go back to your work. I have design drafts to work on, Gale immediately refused. They could not just cling to each other all day long. They needed to be productive. Are you kicking me out? You're having a chat with Joe, but you have nothing to say to me? Shawn asked. Gale grinned. You're the busy CEO, Mr. Wood. Taking 10 minutes to see me is already my honor. If you're truly free, go to the front desk and schedule appointments. 10 minutes is enough to see 3 groups of people. They do not deserve my time. Chapter 1795. Then you're wasting your time here with me, Gale retorted. My time is willingly spent on you, Shawn replied calmly. Gale felt a warm sensation in her heart. To be treated as an exception, something special and unique, was indeed wonderful. Okay. Taking advantage of the lack of attention, Gale quickly planted a kiss on his cheek. I'll come to you before work ends, and we'll go home together. Shawn did not move. She kissed him again. Only then did Shawn slowly rise from his seat. Bye. Gale waved to him playfully, her expression adorable. Suddenly, he remembered something, bending down to her ear. Gally, your menstrual cycle should be ending soon, right? Her smile froze. I keep track of the days. Do not try to hide it from me, Shawn reminded her. At that moment, Gale suddenly wondered if she could have her period twice a month. Could it last only half a month? What to do if her husband had too much energy? Advice needed. Hehe, it's still not quite over. Gale chuckled nervously. It's okay, then let's wait 2 more days. His voice was low. Gale lowered her head, pretending not to hear. Conveniently, her phone rang at that moment. She immediately grabbed it, ignoring Shawn and shifting her attention. Hello. Gale, it's me. Are you busy? Ivy's voice came through. Oh yes, I have some free time right now. Shawn stood beside her, arms crossed, lips pressed together. How could she say she was busy when he was around but be free for others? Ivy continued, do you have time tonight? Any evening would work for me. What's up? Do you need something? Or are you inviting me to dinner? Gale asked. You guessed it, dinner. You and Mr. Wood helped me so much, and I have not done anything for you. I feel uneasy about it. I also do not feel comfortable meeting Mr. Wood privately, to avoid suspicion and not to cause you trouble. Mr. Wood is very busy. Where would he find time for a meal with me? Of course, if Mr. Wood could make it tonight, I'd be even happier. I was actually thinking of inviting you and your husband. Gale smiled. No need to be so polite, but I do need to talk to you about the endorsement. We'll need to discuss how the ads will be filmed and presented. Ivy tentatively asked, so, shall we set it for tonight? To thank you and for business? Sure. Gale agreed readily. After hanging up, she noticed Shawn was still standing there without moving. Why are you not leaving? Everyone says Mr. Wood is a busy man, but here with me, you've become a leisurely one, she said. Ivy invited you to dinner tonight. Yes, you heard it. Do you want to come along? Chapter 1796. Shawn did not hesitate. He immediately refused. I'm not going. Gale found his expression quite amusing. She teased him intentionally. This time it's different. I'll be there, and it's just the 3 of us. Nothing to worry about, nothing will happen, and definitely no intimate photos will be taken. Shawn still firmly declined. I'm not going. Really? You're being so cautious. Then, I might just go alone. Shawn pondered. After a moment, he asked, are you sure it's just you and Ivy tonight? I'm sure. If there were others, she would have told me. Besides, she's just expressing her gratitude. Why would she involve anyone else? Gale replied. Shawn's furrowed brows relaxed slightly. If it was just Gale and Ivy, it truly should not be a problem. Nevertheless, he still felt a bit uneasy. He instructed, come home early, don't drink, remember to check your phone and reply to your messages. You sound like you're lecturing Joshua and Nicole. In my mind, you're not much different from them. Hey! I'm an adult, you know. Gale protested. When did you ever listen to my advice? I remind you not to drink, but you end up drinking anyway. Gale pouted, I asked you to come along, but you refused. No. Shawn did not want to see Ivy. He almost fell into a trap and almost ruined his relationship because of her. Although it was not Ivy's fault, Shawn wanted to stay away as much as possible. If he and Ivy caused another scandal, it would be irreparable. All right, I'll come home early and keep you updated. You, on the other hand, take good care of the kids at home until I return, Gale assured. Shawn left the jewelry department. Gale made a face at his retreating figure. He was decisive and serious in front of others, but in front of her, he was childish and mischievous. Gale returned to her desk and glanced around at her colleagues. After Shawn left, they visibly relaxed. Feeling a bit embarrassed, she ordered coffee and snacks for everyone. At 7 in the evening, as the lights began to glow, Ivy sat by the window in a secluded area of the restaurant. She wore a hat, pulling the brim low. Hearing footsteps, she looked up, smiling faintly. Gale, you're here. Yeah, sorry I'm a bit late. Traffic was bad. No problem. Gale took her seat and looked at Ivy. Going for the natural look again? Yeah. Your skin is really good, you look so beautiful without makeup. How does it feel being God's favorite? How could anyone have such perfect features? Gale remarked. Chapter 1797. Ivy felt a bit embarrassed at her praises. Mr. Wood is truly the most impeccable person I've ever seen, with the most defined facial features. Having such a husband is a blessing envied by many. He indeed does look flawless. But you get used to it after seeing it for a while. Ivy looked amused. You're really adorable. Before meeting Gale, Ivy had assumed that wealthy wives of her caliber were aloof and unapproachable. Furthermore, she would be surrounded by people who were constantly giving her false flattery. It was amazing Gale could remain so approachable. Gale took a sip of water. To be honest, before coming here today, I consulted the advertising department. Next month, we can start working. During casual conversations, Gale was quite laid back. However, when it came to work, she was decisive, serious, and responsible. They discussed the details of the endorsement while having dinner. They did not notice that a car had been parked for a long time across the street. It was Orem. He checked the time on his wrist. It was almost time. This time, he had put his plans in motion. Orem smirked, the dim streetlights making him look somewhat eerie. He opened the car door and confidently stepped out. Gale and Ivy had no idea what was about to happen next. Gale was still enthusiastically discussing her brand matters. I hope you'll wear this set of jewelry for the official launch event. She presented a design draft. It's still in production, so you can only see the drafts. This is the highlight of a winter collection and the most expensive set of jewelry. How much is it worth? $800,000. It's the highest tire collection within Levito. It suits you best. Ivy, as a global spokesperson, you must wear the best and most expensive series. Ivy replied, for me, endorsing Levito is not just a job anymore, it's my responsibility, and I will do my best. Even after this contract expires, she would always stand up for them, actively promoting it. She would do this for Levito, Shawn, and Gale. You are the perfect fit for us. When we were choosing the spokesperson, you were the first person that came to my mind. Gale smiled. Ivy could not help but ask, actually, I've always wondered, did you and Mr. Wood help me retrieve the contract from the agency just to lend me a hand? Gale nodded. I wanted to be friends with you. They exchanged a smile. A girl's friendship was just that simple. At this moment, a familiar male voice suddenly sounded from the side. Gale? You're here too. What a coincidence. Gale looked up. Orem? She was also surprised to see him here. Orem walked over, only to notice Ivy opposite Gale, which surprised him even more. Ivy. You're here too. Ivy nodded, greeting him. Yeah, Orem. Gale and I were having dinner here tonight. Hearing them address each other, Gale could not help but smile knowingly. It had not been long, but they were already so familiar that they could drop the formalities and address each other by name. Chapter 1798. She thought they would have a good shot together. Such a coincidence. Orem, are you here to dine too? Gale asked. Yes, meeting a friend, but I arrived early, he's still on his way. Take a seat then, it's rare to bump into each other here. Ivy and I were just discussing endorsements, Gale greeted. Orem sat down, smiling warmly. Ivy is quite busy nowadays, endorsing Levito and reading scripts simultaneously. Scripts? Yes, for the movie I invested in. I introduced Ivy to the director. They got along well, and the director approves of her. I believe she's perfect for the lead role, Orem explained. Gale's face lit up with delight. Really? That's wonderful. When Orem and Ivy first met and talked about the investment in the movie, she casually mentioned Ivy taking the lead role in the movie funded by Orem. Now, it has happened so quickly. It seemed it was progressing smoothly. It's her talent and understanding of the role that earned her the director's approval. Though I'm an investor, I'm not biased. She earned the role through her skills, Orem said. Of course, Ivy's acting skills are impeccable. She did not win those 2 Best Actress awards for nothing. Gale nodded. Aurum chuckled. I'm really looking forward to Ivy's performance in the movie. I'm sure she'll shine. Let's hope for a pleasant collaboration. Ivy looked at Aurum, her eyes sparkling. However, there was a slight hint of evasion in her gaze, not daring to stare at him for too long. She would always remember her first encounter with Aurum. The skateboarding boy whizzed past, almost crashing into her. He appeared and saved her. Ivy felt a special, indescribable feeling toward Aurum. It was like those love at first sight scenes in the dramas she acted in. Aurum, the gallant gentleman, was the epitome of a charming prince. She remembered Aurum's advice to always look up while walking. Ivy dared not recall further, fearing her emotions might be obvious. If you keep praising me, I might get cocky. Ivy chuckled. Speaking of which, you 2 are my benefactors. One of you gave me the global endorsement for jewelry, and the other gave me the chance to meet the director in person and secure the lead role in a major movie. It's because of you, Gale said. It's your undeniable acting skills that won the director's approval, Aurum added. All right, let's not dwell on it. Here's a toast with tea instead of wine. Ivy earnestly lifted her teacup. Gale, Aurum, it's my luck to know you both. Aurum leisurely poured himself a cup of tea. He glanced at Gale's teacup. It had tea in it. Good. A toast with tea. Aurum also raised his teacup. I won't toast with alcohol today, but it's the thought that counts. Seeing this, Gale nodded. Exactly, who said we must drink alcohol? Tea works just fine. Tea has always been the medium of friendship in a culture since ancient times. Gale did not think much about it. There was no need to be cautious, for it was just tea. Besides, she had already had 2 or 3 cups. The teacups clinked lightly. Aurum took a sip, set down his cup, and glanced at his phone. My friend is here. Gale, Ivy, I'll take my leave. You 2 carry on. Sure. Goodbye, Gale replied. Aurum stood up and glanced at Ivy as if he wanted to say something, but he stopped himself. Chapter 1799. The unspoken words hung in the air. Even Gale, sitting beside him, could see it clearly on Aurum's face. Ivy noticed it too. She wondered why Aurum seemed reluctant to speak to her. Was it because Gale was present, making it awkward to open up, or was it something else entirely? Ivy suppressed her thoughts and stopped her mind from wandering aimlessly. She felt off lately, different from her usual self. Perhaps it was because she had been single for too long. When she met Shawn, she felt her heart race, a slight flutter of excitement. Now, being around Aurum, her heart pounded even more fiercely. Shawn was someone she did not dare and absolutely could not fantasize about. But Aurum, he was single like her. Gale, both overtly and subtly, seemed to hint at the possibility of a match between them. Ivy could sense it. But did Aurum feel the same way? He seemed to show some interest, but Ivy was not entirely sure. She was afraid of overthinking things. While Ivy worried away, Gale did not hesitate to ask. She directly asked, "What's wrong? Do you need to talk to Ivy privately? It's inconvenient because I'm here." "It's okay, just say it. I can step aside." As she spoke, she stood up, indicating her willingness to leave. No. Aurum stopped her. "I just wanted to mention that the friend I'm meeting later is actually a director. If Ivy doesn't mind, she can come along and chat." "I'm fine with that. I've pretty much finished my conversation here," Gale replied. "I thought you girls might have other things to discuss." "We can save that for next time. Let's focus on business matters," Gale said. Ivy also stood up. "The director is here. I should go meet him." The director was the central figure of the upcoming movie. Before filming started, actors needed to meet with the director, discuss the script, and talk about their roles to better portray their characters. Ivy was a dedicated and talented actress. She had read the script, and although it was not complete yet, she was already impressed. It was a rare gem of a script, a remarkable story. She was confident that if the film were released, it would be a success, and that it would do wonders for her career. "It's fine if you don't go. It's just a chance encounter, and I didn't specifically invite you. No need to be overly polite," Oram said. "I think I'll go, it works out well, and I also have some things to discuss with the director." "Well?" Oram glanced at Gale. "You should go, it's okay. It's getting late, and I should head home," Gale said. Besides, there was a jealous man at home waiting for her. If she were late, Shawn would likely come looking. "Home?" A cold glint flickered in Oram's eyes. Chapter 1800. Oram would not let her go home so easily. "Gale, if you don't mind, you can come with Ivy and me. Just say hi, and treat it like you're meeting a new friend. After all, you're Ivy's boss now. You should also care about her career, right?" Oram said. He said it half jokingly, half seriously. He knew Gale would not refuse for this reason. Ivy chimed in, "Yes, Gale, the director is very humorous and knowledgeable. He's a well-known young director in the industry. It's still early, after meeting him, we can leave together." Oram raised an eyebrow. He did not expect Ivy to support him. However, Ivy had no idea what Oram was thinking. She sincerely and innocently wanted to invite Gale to join them. Gale hesitated for a moment. Oram added, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, this director's name is Paul Moorcroft. You must have heard of him." "Paul Moorcroft, the director? Him?" Gale was surprised. "I've heard his name before. I must meet him." Paul was known to be a rare genius in the directorial world. His debut film had earned $200 million at the box office. His subsequent films also exceeded $100 million in revenue and were considered a critical acclaim and box office success. Paul had become a rising star. What's more, he was only 30 years old. No wonder Oram ventured into the entertainment industry and started investing in film and television. It turned out he was collaborating with Paul. "Let's go. He's already here." Oram smiled. Oram pushed the door of a private room open. "Paul, look who I've brought with me." "Paul, nice to see you again." "I'm Ivy," Ivy greeted him. Paul was dressed casually in a white t-shirt and jacket, with tousled hair, exuding a free and easy vibe. Gale thought artistic people were a bit unconventional. "Sit, don't be formal. Do whatever you want." Paul nodded. When he saw Gale, he paused. "And who is this, a new artist signed by Mr. Lefting?" "What artist?" "She's Ivy's boss," Oram clarified. Paul immediately stood up. "Mrs. Wood?" Gale smiled. "Do you know me?" "How could I not? I heard that you signed Ivy as your global spokesperson, and transferred her agency contract to Wood Group. This matter has been widely discussed in the industry. I'm curious, why are you and President Wood so fond of Ivy?" Gale did not answer directly but instead asked, "I also want to ask you why you chose Ivy as the female lead in your new movie." She felt that she and Paul should know the answer since he seemed to appreciate Ivy's qualities and chose her for the movie. Paul's expression changed slightly, and he instinctively glanced at Oram. Oram remained unfazed. Gale noticed, and could not understand why Paul looked at Oram. Did this question have something to do with Oram?